we can trust the Bible to be what it was meant to be. God letting his people tell the story of him and how that story shaped them. And it says that if we, as modern readers, come to the Bible with that understanding, that we too will be shaped by the text as we work on what our relationship with God looks like. There are 4 progressions of different Christian views that a Jesus follower might take as they approach the Bible. And here at Crosswinds, like we've said, that there are people that hold to any one of these views, and that's okay here. We ask you to think about it, pray about it, research it, come to your own conclusion, and we hold space for those differences. And so what we're gonna do this week, maybe just to do it a little bit differently than the ones that we've been doing, is we're gonna kind of walk through a couple passages in the Bible. And what I'll do is I will show you from that passage what views 1, 2, and 3 would say about it. Those are the views that we hit the last 3 weeks. And then I'll tell you what view 4 would say. So it'll kind of be a recap from where we've been, and it'll help you know about this view. So we are going to start out looking at a passage in the Bible that can feel problematic. And it's Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Just right out of the gate, page 1, we run into what could be difficult. So this is the creation passage. This is the whole chapter. There's more of it in chapter 2, but it kind of repeats itself. So here's what it says in Genesis 1. It says that on day 1, God created the light and the darkness. And on day 2, it was the sky separated from the water. And then on day 3, the oceans and the land and vegetation on the land. Day 4 was the sun, the moon, and the stars. Day 5 was sea creatures and birds. And then it culminated in day 6 with animals and humans. So this passage says that all of creation happened in 6 days. Okay, now let's look, like I said, about what the different views that we've been talking about would say about how to view this passage. So view number 1 would say that this is representing a literal 6 days. Remember, this view holds that every word of the Bible is directly from God and completely accurate. So somebody who holds that view, maybe that's you would take that literally. God began creating on day 1, and then each successive level of the days, he created all these things, and at the end, he created animals and humans, and it took 6 days. That's view 1. And view 2 would actually say the same thing, that this is a literal 6 days. Remember, view 2 believes that, yes, every word is exactly how God intended, but he prepared the writers to be able to say every word. So view 2 also holds every word matters. So if it says days, it means days. Now, view 3 was what we talked about last week, and what view 3 would do is they would look at this passage in the context of the writer, and they would maybe have some room for interpretation. They might even say, maybe this has room for some metaphor. Yes, they would say it has the word day, but maybe it's not a literal 24-hour day. Maybe a day is 1,000 years. Maybe a day is 10,000 years. Now, view 4, the view that we're looking at today, would say, it doesn't matter because that's not the point. View 4 does not feel the need to answer whether or not it was 6 days. Instead, it focuses on why the story is being told that way. This view of the Bible says that God allowed his people to tell their story from their own cultural, limited perspective. That the Bible is the story of God, and it's told from a very subjective point of view of real people living in a real place and time. So what view 4 would say, as it were to describe the Bible, it would say that it is a library of ancient human writings that document this spiritual journey of an ancient people. It would say that the Bible looks this way because God let his people tell the story. Now, this is a widely held view among biblical scholars, but maybe the most accessible explanation of it is from a theologian and professor named Peter Enns. He wrote a book called The Bible Tells Me So. And so what we talk about today is kind of laid out in that book. If this is something you'd like to dig into, this would be a good place to start. So we're going to talk about that today. But let's get back to Genesis. How long creation took or what order it was in is not the point according to this view, because for the people who were writing the story, for the people who were receiving the story, they knew it wasn't the point. The heart of the creation story for view 4 is that God intentionally made us and that he made us in his image. And what view 4 offers for some of you that maybe you'd find helpful is sort of some freedom from this pressure to have to make a narrative like this fit a scientific rubric or to be historically accurate. Because view 4 says that the Bible isn't those things because it's not trying to be those things. I've shared before that I grew up in a Christian school, and I was taught this creation story, and I was taught that everything in the Bible was factual and historical and scientific. I was taught that the world was created in a literal 7 days. One time we went to a pretty famous prehistoric fossil research site called the La Brea Tar Pits in Southern California. Now, if you're from Southern California, you might know this is the joke we always had, is that La Brea means the tar. So the La Brea Tar Pits is the tar pits. So that's what we would call it. So I went to the tar pits, and when I got there, I saw saber-toothed cat fossils, and a mastodon skeleton, and all sorts of prehistoric artifacts, which is so cool. But the problem was, I thought they must be fake, because the curator was telling us that they were 66 million years old. But see, if the Bible says that everything started and it was 6 days, and we do the math with all the timelines in the Bible, then the earth must only be a couple thousand years old. And that's what I was taught. And I was literally told that the carbon dating method that got them the 66 million was a flawed method that was sort of a hoax by people who were anti-God, who were trying to trick me. And what view 4 says is that the reason that I was taught that way is because people in my life were trying to make the Bible be something that it was never meant to be. Because remember, the perspective of view 4 says that this is a library of ancient documents that chronicle the story, the spiritual journey of a particular people. Now, for some of you here, that might not feel like a good answer. This might not feel good to you about how to think about the Bible. And there are definitely some critiques of this view. The most prominent one being, how can I trust the Bible to be true and relevant and authoritative in my life if it is subjective writing by flawed people? And how can it be a divine authority in my life if that's the case? And those are legitimate concerns. And so for you, what you've got to consider as you think about this is if this view of the Bible we're talking about today, if it addresses those concerns in a valid way. This view would say that we can trust the Bible to be what it was meant to be. God letting his people tell the story of him and how that story shaped them. And it says that if we, as modern readers, come to the Bible with that understanding, that we too will be shaped by the text as we work on what our relationship with God looks like.